Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of our Trainz route building tutorial series. In this series I'm using TRS-19, but most things also apply to other Trainz versions. In this episode I'm covering terrain tools. Texturing terrains will be covered in a future video. So let's load the route we've been working on. To access terrain tools, click on the Topology tab, which is the first on the right-hand side of the screen. Here you can see the terrain tools available. The first is Height Up. If selected, you can see that a brush is now following my mouse pointer around on the terrain. If I left-click and hold, the terrain is raised where the brush is. The second tool is Height Down. This works the same way as Height Up, only the height goes down. The next tool is the Adjust Height tool. With this selected, if you click and hold and move the mouse up or down, you can drag terrain up or down. I mostly use this tool for detailed work rather than actually making landscapes. Next is the Radius dial. As you might have guessed, this changes the radius of the brush. Next is the sensitivity dial. This changes how fast the terrain is raised or lowered. Next we have the Get Height tool. This will set the height value to the right of it to the value that the cursor is currently at. As you can see, if I move down, the height displayed is 0. If I move up, the height goes up. The next tool is the Use Height tool. With this tool selected, if you draw with the brush you've selected, you can see that the height is being set to a very specific value. This value is the value of the height value, at the moment 47.39 meters. If I type in 20 and then click and draw, you can see that the height is now being set to 20 meters. This is also affected by the radius dial and the sensitivity dial. As you can see with the sensitivity dial all the way down, the terrain is now being adjusted very slowly. If I turn it all the way up, it's being adjusted very quickly. Next is the Plateau tool. This tool sets the terrain height to where you are clicking. So if I click on this cliff face here, the terrain height will be set to this height. If I release, and then left-click on the bottom and then drag over, you can see that the terrain height is now being set to this level. This is very useful for smoothing. If I increase the radius with the sensitivity set all the way up, and then if I click and drag on the middle of this cliff face, you can see how this is now being smoothed. Although this tool works quite well for smoothing, I would appreciate an actual smooth tool in Trainz. Next are the water tools. To add water, click on the Add Water tool. This is also affected by the radius dial, but not by the sensitivity dial. To add water, simply click and draw on the terrain where you want water to be added. To change the height of the water, either select the Adjust Water Height tool and then click and drag on the water up or down, or type in a height you want in the water height value, for example 20 meters, then select the Add Water tool, and then start drawing from where there is no water at the moment. It is important that this does not touch, because if I draw from where the water is, you can see that the water height value has been changed to the height of the water I clicked on. So let's set the height back to 20 meters. Now if I do click on where there is no connected water at the moment, you can see that the water is now much higher up than before. Now if I draw over the actual water we already have, you can see it's being updated to the new height, but there's also this transition area here. This can be useful if you want to make water go up or down hills, but it is quite difficult to use as clicking on a water level that's already connected will change it back. Now, to remove water, select the Remove Water tool and then left-click on the water you wish to remove. Next are the baseboard tools. I've already covered these in the second video, but I will mention them here again. The first is the Add or Update Ground tool. Select this and click on the side of a baseboard to add another baseboard. To the right of that tool is the Set Ground Grid Resolution. This is either 10 meters or 5 meters. The 5-meter grid size allows for more detail when manipulating terrain. To update an already placed tile, click on the top of the tile with the Add or Update Ground tool still selected, and then confirm that you wish to change the resolution. This cannot be undone. To remove a baseboard, click on the Delete Ground tool and then left-click on a tile. This cannot be undone. Now let's open the Advanced tab. If you are using TRS-19, this is where your ground clutter and turf FX tools are located. You can select an effects layer here, or add an effects layer here. I will not be covering turf effects or ground clutter in this video. Below that, you can select a displacement map. For this example, let's select Mountain 01. As you can see, a grayscale map has now been loaded. This is called a height map. The lighter areas on the texture indicate higher terrain, the darker ones indicate lower terrain. Selecting a height map or displacement map, for example Mountain 01, basically changes the shape of the brush. So if I now select the Height Up tool and draw, you can see that it's no longer a circle, but rather the texture we've selected, Mountain 1. To make the terrain go down instead, select the Height Down tool, and you can see the terrain goes down with the pattern selected in the texture. You can use the arrows at the bottom of the texture to rotate the texture. Now, if you want this displacement map to be applied to a specific area of the terrain, you can select the Select Area tool, and then click and drag on the terrain to select an area, and then click the Fill Area tool. This area has now been filled with the height data from the height map. But as you can see, this is quite extreme terrain. So let's see if we can get it a bit less extreme. Press Ctrl Z or Z to undo the last action, and then change this slider below the texture to change how strong the texture is. Let's put it almost completely to the left. Now if I select an area and then press the Fill Area button, you can see that the terrain is now much smoother. To cancel a selection on the ground, click the Cancel Selection button. Now, you can also make your own height maps. To do this, make sure the Select Area tool is selected, and then left-click and drag on an area you wish to make into a height map. So I'll just select this area right here. Then if I click the Get Displacement button, you can see that a new texture has been added. Now, if I switch over to the Height Up tool, you can see that if I click and hold, the same corner has now been reproduced here. To save this newly created displacement map, click on the check mark on the displacement texture. You will be asked to specify a name and a description. For this example, I'm going to use the name Amazing Hill. Giving a name is required, giving a description is not. So I'll skip the description and just hit the check mark to confirm. Now, if I click on the displacement map list, you can see that Amazing Hill is listed here. Now, by saving this new height map or displacement map, you've created a new asset. This means that the displacement map will be available not just in this route, but in all routes. This also means that to delete it, you have to delete the asset. To do this, you need to go to the Content Manager, so close Trainz. Let's save. Then go to Manage Content. And then search for the name of the asset, so in my case, Amazing Hill. Then right-click the asset and click Delete. This action cannot be undone. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful.